Hello and welcome. I'm Linda Seacrest, a co-founder of Reset and the president of Southwest Florida Reset Center. And I really am excited to welcome you tonight to this Reset conversation with Josephine De DeVincenzi. So first I want to make a land acknowledgement, which I learned how to do after our Reset program on how to be a good neighbor. So I acknowledge that I live on the land of the first indigenous people, the Calusa, who suffered genocide at the hands of the Spanish explorers. This is the land where the Calusa created a sophisticated society, celebrated life, and stewarded the lands and waters, raised their families, fished, and buried their deceased family members. Today, the Seminole and Miccosukee Indians steward the Tree Islands, land and waters of the Everglades, which is their homeland, as well as their burial lands of their ancestors. Through the Reset program, How to Be a Good Neighbor, I now know that Columbus did not discover this land along with Spanish explorers. He stole it from the first indigenous people. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Reset Center. Some of you today, or with us today, have already heard this, but we as Reset are dedicated to finding workable solutions to the root causes of our environmental issues, particularly those that address climate resilience, sea level rise, and clean water. We see regenerative agriculture and resilience ecology as major climate solutions in our bioregion. We are a nonprofit organization located on 12.5-acre campus of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Fort Myers. That's where we have our office. And we're also a resource sharing partner with the Collaboratory in downtown Fort Myers. So I'd like to introduce those of us who are on our board here. So we have Joe, and just kind of wave so we know who you are. Joe Benassia, Gary Robbins, Holly Rowan, and Graham. And I think that's it. I think I got everybody. These people are on our board of directors. So I want to let you know too that RESET is an acronym, and it stands for Restorative, Ecological, Social, and Economic Transformation. Transformation is the important word because we have to transform ourselves before we can transform the land. We offer free educational opportunities such as this, the RESET conversations, to address the root causes of the harmful environmental policies and practices. And we are beginning to work on solutions together with other nonprofits in our bioregions. Actually, 3 years ago, 5 of us ordinary people came together because we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to test Margaret Mead's quote, "Never forget that a small group of concerned citizens can make a difference, for indeed it is the only thing that ever has." We're finding that that's true, a little bit at a time, but we're doing it. We're happy that after 3 years, we're growing and expanding our board and our community engagement. And we've just added 3 new board members, Graham Scott, who I introduced, Robin Cerny, who is not with us, and Professor Nora Demers from FGCU. So before we move on, just a couple of housekeeping things. Just put yourself all on mute so we don't have any interference when we record the call. And if you have any questions as we go along, put them in the chat, and either probably Joe or Holly or Gary will probably collect those and ask them afterwards. And if you learn anything from our conversation tonight, please share it on Facebook or any other social media. You can share the link to the recording, which we will be sending you, because we just want Reset, other people to know what Reset is doing. So now I'll introduce the presenter. Josephine De DeVincenzi is a retired educator with 38 years of experience in teaching, coaching, and administration. She served 14 years as a high school principal and 10 years as assistant superintendent of schools. These professional duties required significant responsibility for planning, organizing, collaborating, and supervising people and ideas, as well as overseeing safety and health concerns. In retirement, she has returned to her lifelong commitment to environmental issues, which is, as she is doing it, the Carbon Crew Project, which works to reduce household emissions by empowering groups of people, which she calls crews, to design and implement their own personal climate action plan. Their mission is to reverse global warming from the bottom up by using visionary, inspiring blueprints intended to shift behaviors. Collaboration with others increases accountability and ensures success in reducing carbon footprints, creating a cleaner, greener, regenerative future. Take it away, Josephine.
Thank you for that introduction, Linda, and
you're welcome.
Welcome everybody. As Linda has made reference to, I spent most of my years as an educator professionally, and I've always been an outdoor enthusiast and bird watcher. As a matter of fact, I belong to the Calusa Bird Club in Fort Myers since I moved here part-time 20 years ago. So you have the background. We'll get into a little more about the project that I'm in and the title of tonight's talk, which is how to create a personal climate action plan. We begin all our crew sessions, and I'd like to begin tonight with one of my favorite opening prayers or quotes. And this one I chose tonight is from Jane Goodall, because I think it's about what we're about to do in terms of increasing our understanding. Quote, "Only if we understand will we care, and only if we care will we help, and only if we help shall all be saved." Crew's mission, as Linda said, is to empower people to reverse global warming and build a regenerative future. And it's interesting that our vision coincides with the vision of Reset. It's to spark, and I hope tonight will be one of those sparks, the exponential transformation needed for a flourishing planet now. And our motto is simply 1 month for the Earth. When people such as the environmentalist Paul Hawken do climate talks like this one, the most common question that Paul gets, and he's talked about it in an interview back a couple of years ago, was basically, what do we do? Where do we start? And how do I make a difference? And he himself admits in this interview that I'm sure many of you looked at or read the book Project Drawdown, and that listed the 100 solutions that is the basis for a lot of actions around the world. Paul created the most comprehensive plan to solve the climate crisis. Actually, it's the only plan. So I know he spoke to this group before, and I don't think he needs a lot of introduction to most of you. You probably know more about him than I do. But he has been a part of conversations of our Carbon Crew project drawdown festivals. And tonight, I want to take off on the point which he admits himself was a shortcoming of Project Drawdown, because while it went through a very detailed description of each of these solutions and the scientific analysis of where they rank order based on the amount of gigatons of carbon that they're able to sequester, it still didn't answer those questions about what to do and where to start. Carbon Crew, which we call a kind of book club on a mission, really helps provide those answers, because we read together a book. The book is 2040, and I'll do a little pitch here. It's written by a film documentarian Damon Gameau. And if you do nothing else, see the film 2040, which is available on YouTube and Netflix. And as Linda just held up, the book was written after the film, but it is equally engaging and filled with beautiful photographs because he is a film documentarian. So we hope, and we use this book, at the point where we decided, as I was the educator in the group, to try to create a kind of Socratic seminar around a primary text, we chose 2040 over Project Drawdown because it was much more engaging. And the book is filled with things that we can do at the household levels. And it targets 4 basic areas: energy and transport, drawdown and sequester, and consumption. And so when we look at even Paul's second book, which many of you have also seen, which is a very hopeful, much more storytelling version of drawdown principles, his book, Regeneration in One Generation, is quite a wonderfully written book. Again, just as he did in the first book, I think he was short on not just solutions, but on what can we do at the household level to do something about climate change. And so what I want to do before we get into specifically looking at these instruments that we call personal climate action plans, I want to take you through our user guide and show you a little video that we put together. Let me see if I could screen share this now. Can you see this? Are you able? Yeah, okay, great. So yeah. This is the opening, and this is a user guide that is on our website, carboncrewproject@gmail.com, or carboncrewproject.org is the actual website. That was where you could send us a note. In this user-friendly book, we basically have an open-sourced curriculum, which we're happy to have you pick up and look at. And if you're a teacher, you should be readily able to do this. But in this overview that I'm showing you, one of the things I want to address is we have a series not only of materials to look at each chapter of the book in great detail, as we take this book and we divide it into 5 sessions so that we can really look in depth and use the book as the basis for reflection on these areas that we feel and the book highlights are things that are within our grasp to do something about. I want to share this overview with you that one of the other co-founders created. Carbon Crew, this book club on a mission, does give us an overview based on the work primarily of Project Drawdown, but also embedded within the 2040 approach. And the 2040 book, to us, was the best source for getting to those items that we truly believe are the things that we can do something about. And as I said earlier, the 4 sections of the book are really areas that are well within our grasp. We don't need government, we don't need policy to touch on the things that we have control over in our own lives. Energy and transport, drawdown and sequester, which really deals with food and food consumption, and then consumption, which really focuses on almost everything outside of organic things, like the second largest polluter in the world is the whole textile industry. I think that the most important thing that we try to say in Carbon Crew, and it's funny that Linda, the work of Reset, was focused on Margaret Mead, because Crew represents not only the way we work together in crews, but also the fact that, as Margaret Mead said, when we bring together these small group of thoughtful, committed citizens, we do get to a place of inspiring and supporting each other, and we make things happen. And so the big thing that separates us from most of the talks you've heard about climate change is really that we use a primary source and we can make reference to that source. And no matter how many things you've read about climate change, I think looking at the film and reading the book 2040 is filled with lots of vivid ways and practical ways to make a difference. One of the things in our work, and I'll say it to all of us who care about saving this planet, is that we were in the midst of developing this program when we connected with the UN Environmental Program report in 2020. And at that time, they revealed the first time we had ever heard this statistic, and I think it's the most compelling thing of all, is that 2/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions come from decisions we make in our homes at the household level. I mean, I have to repeat that again, because when we heard it, I went, no, it's the Koch brothers, it's industrialists. No, guys, it's us. As a matter of fact, a study that recently was released in Europe suggests that it might even be closer to 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from the 8 billion plus of us on this planet making decisions every day. So that was a significant finding and a reason that pushed us to continue to do and build CREW. The other major thing I want to say that is different about us is that we read these chapters and we look at what many of you already know about environmental choices that we make, but then we do an important thing. We ask people at the conclusion of each chapter to not only reflect on what was most impactful for them, because we all come from different places. We all have different levels of disposable income. We're at different points in our lives. I do see some younger people here. Well, in my 30s, I would have done, if these things were available, I would have done other choices earlier. But at 75, I'm not in a position to necessarily go out and give up my car and buy an EV vehicle or put solar panels on my roof. So, but there is something we can all do. And it is the action that Linda asked me to speak about tonight that I think is most important: a personal climate action plan. What do they look like? And where can we go with these? CREW encourages everybody to look at and talk about this with everybody we meet, because if we can boil it down to the simple 5 facts, it's warming, it's us, we're sure, it's bad, and human beings have the ability to do something about it. And what's that ability look like? Well, it starts with looking at these, and I hope we can, it's not a video, so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to share my screen and show you as part of our sessions. This is our outline of how we do an overview of the whole program, and then we get into the conversation about energy and transport, and then we have a PCAP discussion. After reading it, what did you decide you could do about this topic? Then it's shared, and to the extent that they're shared, people can inspire one another to do more or think about and replicate what other people are doing. So we do that through these 4 sections. And one of the other things that holds our feet to the fire about this is when we do our energy, let's look at one. This is, hopefully you can see this. Can everybody see this? No.
We can see session 1 and 2.
So what you'll need to do is to stop sharing this screen and then hit share screen and open it up to the new page that you just opened to in Safari.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not following you on your links, but there you go.
How's that?
Yeah, great.
Okay. So here's an example of a Carbon Crew PCAP, a personal climate action plan that was generated in kind of like a punch list, which what I want to show you is there are a number of items on this list, and where we can cite the drawdown rank order of that, we put it in, because not all things are equally impactful. And so when we look at trying to create our own personal climate action plan, we should pick the things that really are the most impactful. So if you have the difference between investing in a new thermostat or LED lighting can bring about more carbon savings. It's ranked 21st on the list, as opposed to 38, a smart thermostat, which you can go and turn down your own thermostat and keep it at a lower level. So these are some of the practical things that people can do in their homes. Running dishwashers only when full, using cold water. And of course, later on, we talk about using, instead of in plastic containers, the new laundry sheets, which, by the way, Procter & Gamble just put out new laundry sheets. So that's a huge plus. And we've broken the list up into what are called renter or fixed income people list of activities that are not expensive to do, and we can all do. And then we draw the list down to people with a little more disposable income or happen to own their own homes. So you could install a low flow shower head. Again, it's number 80. So maybe you'd go to the list and think about the solar panel issue, or think about having just even your home rated for efficiency, and considering, down here, people don't think about insulation as we do up north, but you could still use insulation to keep heat out as well as heat in. So a lot of people never talk about it down here. But these are all items for our personal consideration. And then if you've already been at this, which many of us have for many, many years, we also suggest policy items. But in our view, it's as important and more important, if you think about the 2/3 equation, to get these personal things done that we can control. And by the way, did I say, not only will you be helping to save the planet, you'll be saving money. So when you do a number of these items, you are also going to save yourself some money. So if you've done all these items, if you're way ahead of the game, then consider some of the things that you can do from a policy perspective, from a transport perspective. So at the end of this section on energy and transport, we ask people to submit, to cut and paste this list and figure out what are the things they can do something about, and submit it. And then we print you back out through Google Docs a copy, which you can keep, because when people make commitments to this, it matters. It's much more so than just talking about it, that I'll get around to it. We ask people to think about what are the things that you can do initially, maybe something you'll project to do in the next 3 to 5 years. And here you see something called the Personal Earth Overshoot Day. Many of you know about carbon footprints. We looked at a lot of them, but we found that this simple to use, kind of engaging survey that allows you to assess your Earth Overshoot Day before you begin looking at this, before actually session 1. We ask you to take your carbon footprint, and then we will ask you, after the 4 sessions are over, at the 5th session, to project out, if you were to complete all the things you said you could do in the next 5 years, then retake the Earth Overshoot Day as if you were able to implement them all. And when people have done that with the many, many crews that we've been doing, on average, people save between 2 to 3 months of the Earth's resources. So it gives people a little bit of incentive to keep it going. So you could see we've asked people, what are you going to do in 1 year? What are you going to do in the next 5 years? And then submit it. Now I'm hoping that when I do this, I'd like to go back to the personal climate action plan, but I see we're at 6:38. The one personal climate action plan under drawdown and sequester, it has a similar list to the one you just saw. And without going there and losing screens again and changing screens, I'll just say this, that the single largest way that we can help solve the climate crisis right now is getting control of something we all do every day of our lives. It's food waste. Food waste used to be the number 3 solution on the original drawdown list. It's now in some scenarios, the number 1 solution. And think about this. 43% of all the food that we have in this country goes to waste. 30% globally. But when we talk about food waste, and this is an important thing to understand about the rank ordering, food waste doesn't mean composting. Food waste means that we make a pledge that we will buy only what we know we can eat. We will eat everything we buy, and then we will make a plan for the leftovers. If we could all pledge that today, we would go a long way to helping this planet. And if we said that to young families, you can save 43% of your food budget if you'll just do the number 1 thing you can do to solve the climate crisis: control food waste. Now remember, the energy it takes to put food on your table starts with energy when we grow the plant from seeds, when we nurture it, when we till the soil, hopefully by hand, when we harvest it, when we get it to market, that's transportation, when we refrigerate it in the market, then we drive to the store, we get it, we bring it home, we refrigerate, we cook it, and then we have a 20-minute meal, we throw it in the back of our refrigerator, and too often it sits there until it's wasted away. That's something every one of us can do today. Take control of our refrigerators and our food budgets. And back to composting. It is an important solution. But if you looked at the composting number in rank order in the original drawdown proposal, it was ranked 60th. So if at the end of the day you do end up, and we're all hypocrites, so I mean, we all do occasionally throw out stuff, just make it a small amount as possible. And if you did have a composter, that's the time to put it in the composter. So that is one of the most important things with the personal climate action plans that we can do. Find those solutions that you have control over and do something about it. And by the way, 8 of the top 20 solutions in Project Drawdown are related to food. Final thing I'll say, if I didn't move you enough, 1 out of every 4 children in this country goes to bed hungry or food deprived. I think it's a huge moral issue. Please start doing something and get everybody to take that pledge. One of the other ways that we look at these climate action plans is we end up one month after our crew is over, we ask people to revisit their climate action plans and see how they're doing, see if they have any questions, and figure out a way to move them forward and see if there's any other solutions that can be shared. I'm going to close by saying, Paul Hawkins says, the true top solutions of what to do are what you can do, what you want to do, and what you will do. So we can show you all the rankings, but it's really the value of the punch list and the list that we've constructed to go along with the 2040 book are things that really, when you commit to something like a personal climate action plan, you end up doing something. Something happens. You will never not look in your grocery shopping without thinking about what food I'm buying, where did it come from? Is it, as we try to encourage people to become locavores, is it grown in Florida, for God's sakes, or wherever you might be living now? Can you go to farmers markets and not buy stuff in plastic? These are all things that we can make as a part of our personal climate action plans. And I'll just leave you with Paul Hawken in his Regeneration book asks us to guide our actions by a series of questions that sound like this. Does the action we put on our list create more life or reduce it? Does it heal the future or steal it? Does it enhance human well-being or diminish it? And it goes on a list of 12 different things that you should check yourself on. If you go to regeneration.org/punchlist, you can look at this. But I'm going to leave you with that and say, I heard Al Gore, one of my other heroes, talk today in a climate talk, and he closed his speech with what I want to close with you today. The closing quote is, it's actually a talk about what the fossil fuel industry doesn't want you to know. And at the end of it, I mean, the big thing is, are we doing enough and are we doing it fast enough? And he discusses that in the talk. But at the end of the talk, he urged us, as I'm going to try to urge all of us tonight, to not give in to despair, that it's not too late. We do have solutions. And the most important thing is the will to act is in and of itself a renewable resource. So think about that as you construct the list of things that you can do. And most of all, I hope you would join us in a Carbon Crew, where we walk you through the various sectors that you can think about and employ in your own personal life. Please, if you have any questions, you can get through to Linda or check out carboncrewproject.org. Thank you. Sorry we had these technical difficulties. I wanted to show you, and if you go on regeneration.org and look at the punch list, they're pretty simple things. I'm going to make a commitment to not waste as much food, to make sure that I'm buying food locally, that I'm eating more plant-based diets, things like that, that are simple things that really will have the greatest impact. So if anybody has any questions, I am happy to take a stab at it.
Okay. Thank you, Josephine. That was the thing of it that I love about it is you can feel your passion for the subject. It oozes out of you, which I think that's what you need. You know, is you need to be passionate about it. So I was wondering, and it is in the chat, the carboncrewproject.org. The link is in there, and Casey was here and listened to this, and I was kind of curious as to whether those are any things that come up. I mean, you went to COP27 last year. Did they ever discuss any of this sort of thing in the?
Well, I actually wasn't at COP27. I had to coordinate those programs from here, but I did review each day's events every day, and we had 5 people on the ground. I had a medical incident that prevented me from going on 2 days' notice, so we had to coordinate the shows from Florida.
Okay.
I don't remember anyone talking about such a personalized or individualized regimen, which is really great, you know, to recenter that all on each respective person's, you know, responsibility. I think that's great. I mean, I think that, and I noticed that, and it's maybe purposeful, you did not get into, you know, vote for green candidates or invest in green companies. You know, vote with your wallet, you know, only buy things from environmentally responsible companies, but that we can do that too. We just finished a film, a half-hour film on climate change, and covered a lot of Hurricane Ian, which will be out. Actually, we may premiere it on the 28th of September, which you will note is a kind of significant date.
Ian Day, yeah, Ian.
And we had a lot of young people from the Gulf Coast Green Club, Environmental Club, and they suggested at the end of the movie a bunch of things we can do in our homes. And they said many things you covered. Turn your thermostat down, buy used clothing, drive an EV if you can, ride a bike or use public transportation, invest in green companies, vote for green candidates, plant trees, eat less dairy and meat, install solar. And I would like to add too, use your own bags at the supermarket. This plastic thing drives me nuts.
Yes.
And compost when you can. So wonderful, Josephine, to hear all that. I applaud that effort. That sounds like a really worthwhile organization that you've helped bring to the fore.
Thank you.
And Gary, I would ask you, because you completed the crew project, so you were with Josephine. What did you think of the experience? I know you had some powerful things. I think you're on mute. Maybe not. Okay.
No, I think I'm not.
Oh, you're not. No, you're not.
It was a wonderful experience, and the kind of passion that Joe has is, I mean, just runs throughout the program. And I've been around climate, of course, like many of you, for quite some time now, and I was impacted by the overshoot date. It's impactful to see that you are using up your valued resources, maybe 1/3 into the 1/4 or 1/3 into the year. You've used them all up, and that's really impactful. And the things to really look at, the personal things that you can do, is really helpful. And I'm looking forward to our getting together next month, month after our last meeting, to review where we are with our personal plans and see what is happening with the other members of the crew. And part of that will be what we are willing to do ourselves to get another crew together. And I think that's flyer effect is really, really important.
You know, Gary, thank you for mentioning that, because when we talk about transformational growth, one of the things we envisioned was this small group of 4 to 6 people. If you go out and all 4 to 6 of you, in our case it was 7, go out and start your own group of 4 to 6 people, it doesn't take but 5 to 7 iterations to reach thousands. And here's the thing, you don't need to touch base with any climate deniers. The research from Erica Chenoweth at Harvard suggests that you only need 3.5% of any population to start a movement. And if you do that in your little area and you get a few thousand people, depending on the population, if you can get to that 3.5% tipping point by starting a crew and having those crews replicate, which is, thank you, Gary, for saying, it's a huge piece of this, is that we hope we give, and the user guide is up there. It's open sourced. We urge you to go look at it, take what you want of it. It's all written out. We have cute little videos that really do work and that will make more vivid the conversation. And when you do that, hopefully it will give you the tools. And of course, the best way to replicate is to have done a crew and then co-host with somebody maybe in your crew, or call us and we'll co-host 1 or 2 to get you going. We have the emails to send out. We've got it all together. All you have to do is pick it up and move with it. Thanks for mentioning that, Gary.
Graham, you had a question?
Not, excuse me, not so much a question, but comments on Josephine's comments on food waste. And just to add some points there, 42% of the food in the US is wasted, and 2/3 of that 42% is at the consumer end. So we've used fossil fuels to till and to sow and to harvest and transport and get it to Publix, and we take it home, and then and restaurants also end up throwing it out. So that's equivalent of 63 million tons of food. There's more than enough food to feed all the homeless and everybody else in there. But also the other thing is that about 10% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from decomposing food waste.
Yeah.
It's going into the atmosphere. And 33 plant calories are needed to produce 1 calorie from beef. There's not a very efficient way of eating or consuming food. And about 20% of meat produced globally is wasted. So that's equivalent of about 75 million birds and animals have been fed and watered and then raised up, slaughtered, and then we eventually throw them out. So just to build on what Josephine was saying, that food waste is a major cause. And then when you expand that from 63 million tons in the US, it's 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted worldwide. There's more than enough food to feed everybody on this planet if we were just smarter in the way we do it. So I'm sorry, this is really an emotional thing to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say you'll learn in 2040 that France and Italy made it illegal for grocers to throw out edible food.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's something we can do something about. And I went to my local Publix in Neapolitan. I lost my home in Hurricane Ian in Park Shore area. I went to that Park Shore Publix and I asked him, what happens to your used and dated food? And here's some good news. The Harry Chapin Fund is so big now, and Harry Chapin was really into food and helping the poor. He now has refrigerated trucks all around the country. Every ounce of ground meat, instead of being chucked out as it used to be, is now the night that it is about to go to be expired, it is frozen, and Harry Chapin picks up all those blocks of meat and takes them to food pantries, picks up all the canned goods, takes them to food pantries. But listen to this. At your Publix, I'm sure it's true, as it was in mine, none of the baked goods, which expire after 3 days, they're not going to sell, stale bread, but it's still edible. I was picking up with my team of people just before the hurricane, 3 shopping carts full of baked goods, 3 shopping carts. I took it to St. Matthew's house every day, and my friends did. 3 shopping carts. Now listen to this win-win. You take the food from Publix that they're going to just chuck in their dumpster. You get it to St. Matthew's. Poor people have food to make sandwiches, all that bread, and get a load of this. Publix wants that to happen because they get the write-off because I signed that they just put 3 shopping carts full. Now, here's your food equity thing. After doing this for months, I went back to the manager and I said, do you realize that you're giving away 3 shopping carts full of food, of baked goods every day? Don't you think you could diminish that? You know what, this guy, he was wonderful. That's why it's important to talk to these people. He said to me, you know, if I cut back my baked goods, I have to cut back my bakery staff. And those people who are making that food will lose their job. I went, okay, I can get rid of the baked goods for you. I'm saying every one of you tomorrow, go to the grocery store that you shop at and ask them that question and see if you can't connect somebody, or see if Harry Chapin picks up in your area, or food pantries or places where you can be a facilitator to get that food from being in the dumpster to being in someone's stomach. Just another thing to add to your PCAP.
Well, thank you, Josephine.
Okay.
Well, I know that one of the things that, Louise, were you going to ask a question or make a comment?
I just want to make a quick comment to dovetail on that. I also lost my home in Hurricane Ian, which is why I'm up on Cape Cod now. But in Massachusetts, we have a wonderful program called Gleaners. And Gleaners are a group, they're fanned out across the state. They have contracts basically with local farmers. And the produce that is bruised or ugly and will not sell in the stores, the Gleaners pick, and it all goes to the food pantries. So what you're doing is you're providing fresh food to predominantly urban centers, but they're the food deserts anyway. And it's been a tremendous success. And I mentioned it years ago in Florida, and everybody looked at me like I had, you know, I was crazy. But I just think that it's a program that could be national.
Yep.
Can I dovetail real quick on Louise?
Yeah, go ahead, Holly.
Just Louise, as you were talking, it was making me think about a group that we just had talk to us a few months ago, Cultivate Abundance. And they're in both Collier and Lee County. And it's just a couple of faith-based people go around, they're connected with Mission Peniel and Immokalee, but they go around and pick up food from anybody that's growing food. They'll go pick fruit off your trees, whatever, and take them to Mission Peniel to help feed the farm workers themselves.
That's exactly what this program was.
That's exactly what it is.
Climb trees and pick apples, or you're picking, we picked bruised melons, we picked everything.
Yeah, it's really great. So that is happening a little bit in Lee County. So I think the more that Reset, and those of you who haven't been kicked out of the state by Hurricane Ian like myself, perhaps could really support Cultivate Abundance and other groups to start gathering and distributing food instead of wasting it. And I have to say that of all the climate change solutions that my partner Liz and I have looked at since Paul Hawken wrote the book, reducing food waste has been the most consistent and deepest commitment we've made. And it took us 3 weeks to drive across the country to move from Fort Myers to Olympia, Washington. And I have to say how hard it is to travel and be green, how hard it is to reduce food waste. We had to really watch what we ordered in restaurants or what we buy in grocery stores and figure out, plan way ahead. And the hardest part, and I'm wondering if someone somewhere has a way to address how to travel and not use plastics when every hotel and motel you check into has everything in plastic. So we're bringing our own sporks with us and our own sugar or honey for our coffee, but it's really difficult. Here in Olympia, I have seen a few places where they're not only recycle bins, but there's food waste bins. And we saw that up in Canada too. We saw it in Toronto and in a couple of other provinces that there's actually receptacles for food waste. So that would take a whole municipal system to do something with that food waste. They would, I suppose they would compost it. But I just want to say also to those of you that do know me and didn't know what happened to us, Hurricane Ian pretty much blew us out of the water too, or the water into our home enough to make us want to leave. And I can't remember where I was going, except for that we're still really, really committed to seeing climate change solutions really happen in Florida. Florida still is ground zero. And here in Olympia, we are seeing the effects of climate change, and the work is everywhere. It's everywhere. And the third thing I'd like to say is we do have a next Reset conversation coming up that Joe or Linda will tell us about, but I'm wondering if we want to get together in the next couple of weeks and talk again about making a plan, or maybe I put in the chat possibly another small group like you and Gary, and I don't know who else has been in that group with you, Josephine, but Hillary, right. I'm wondering if more of us want to do that and help each other stick to a deeper commitment.
Well, we are available. I'm happy to do this. I was hoping that tonight would spark a few new crews. And I think that the one other thing I'd say is, like, the 5 sessions together build community. We now, I know Gary is here, and Hillary and I are having lunch next week. And, you know, there's a way that we can support one another through what's a difficult time that we're living. And that's the other big thing. We have to stay optimistic and encouraging of one another, because the planet needs us. We can do this. The solutions are there. As Paul says, this isn't a scientific problem. It's a human problem.
Yeah.
We have to raise awareness and get people to move from talking about it to acting. And that's what your personal climate action plan doesn't have to look like ours, but just sit there after you've done this reading and commit yourself to the things that you know you will do. Kind of like the food pledge. What's the pledge you're going to take about clothing? The second biggest polluter. Paul says food waste is number 1, clothing is number 2, and transportation would be number 3. And then realize you're not alone. Don't try to do this work alone. It gets depressing. Be together. You know, you're down, somebody's up, somebody's got good news, somebody's got a practical solution that can make a difference in your community. And then you replicate it. You go to your grocery store, you ask some questions. So keep the faith.
Joe, you had a question. You had your hand up. Do you still?
Not a question really, just some information. I know up in Vermont, you're not allowed to throw out food waste. You have to put it out. It gets collected. And I know that some of the smaller farmers there gladly take it, and they set up, significant size composting operations on their land, and that ends up being extra income for them. So it's a win-win situation up there.
Yeah, here's the other thing I remember I wanted to say, Joe, you sparked it on me. When Liz and I were looking for an apartment to live here, which was hard to do, we found this place where we are because of its location. We can walk to the pharmacy, we can walk to 2 or 3 stores and farm stands. There's a park just down the street with us that has a big community compost. And so
Wow.
if and when we make moves like we've just had to make, if we can strive to live in a walkable community where we can be green and we can do it as a community, where we just got guided to be where we are. And it's really a blessing to be here. So I just wanted to say that too, because I think that it's really important that we do all those things that you listed in the very beginning. And that's the next thing we got to do in this rented house type apartment, is change all the lights, because they're not LED lights. So even if you're a renter, which we haven't been in many decades, we're starting to find out that there's things that we can do in this unit that might inspire the 80 other units that are in this little village where we're living now. So I'm really inspired, and I really want to thank you so much, Joe. I never met you before, been hearing good things about this from our rest of our board. And I'm not sure where we go from here. Maybe Linda or Joe have some ideas.
Well, anybody, please, if you're interested in getting together in a couple of weeks to talk about a crew project, and you want to do a group, please let us know. And I also want to tell you that our next Reset conversation is September the 6th. And it's called Operation Medicine Cabinet, keeping drugs out of Lee County's aquifer, which is very important. There is a growing concern about the occurrence of pharmaceuticals in water bodies and drinking water. Pharmaceuticals get into the water supply via human excretion and drugs being flushed down the toilet. So you can learn from Operation Medicine Cabinet, which is supported by the United Way, Hendry and Glades County. They're increasing awareness of the importance of disposing of unused, expired pharmaceuticals using a system. It's called DTERRA system disposal bags. And Deborah Camilla, who is the executive director of Drugs Free, will be our speaker on the 6th. So I hope you'll join us and let us know if anybody is interested in coming together around CREW. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Josephine, for your time and your energy and your passion. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Linda, for the opportunity.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Bravo.
So,